YouTube as well. Hey guys, it's your girl Jessica. Our studio for the radio was flooded. We had a flood a couple days ago, and so I'm unable to be at the radio for a few days. And several people called in just asking me, hey, when are you going to do another video? When are you going to upload another video? Before that, I was gone for 2 weeks. In my family, there was an illness, so I had to leave Texas and go to South Carolina for a little bit, but I'm back, and so I decided, hey, even though the studio's flooded, we're getting it cleaned up, I'm going to still go ahead and do a video for you guys, so I'm super, super excited about that. What am I going to be talking about today? A few days ago, God was just talking to me through Exodus 6. Exodus 5. It was absolutely phenomenal. Basically, when God speaks, the enemy will come to distract, the enemy will come to discourage and to destroy. But it always seems to happen. It seems like everything goes absolutely nuts when God begins to move, when God says, okay, we're going to move forward. I'm going to move you forward into a new season, or we're going to work on this one area in your life so that you can be free from this thing. It seems like every time we get to this place to where we're going to be moving forward, the enemy comes and tries to just present this roadblock, and oftentimes we become discouraged. So in that, Moses in Exodus chapter 5, he is tasked with leading the Israelites out of Egypt and into the promised land. So before the plagues, before all that stuff happens, God's like, okay, go to Pharaoh and say, hey, we got to go offer sacrifices in the wilderness. Will you let us go? We got to go. And Pharaoh keeps saying, no, 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 no. Let's go to verse 4. Pharaoh replied, Moses and Aaron, why are you distracting the people from their tasks? Get back to work. Let me tell you something, guys. Every time God begins to move, the enemy's like, wait a second. I don't want you distracted. I don't want you distracted from what I have for you. What does the enemy have for you? He wants you to be lazy, right? He doesn't want you to be distracted from laziness. Maybe he wants you to be so consumed with work that you aren't even thinking about the assignment that he has for you, that he wants you to focus on. We get so busy. What does busy stand for? Being under Satan's yoke, being busy. And so maybe the enemy wants you to be thinking about all these things that are pretty much unfruitful, focusing on things that are small potatoes in light of what God wants you to focus on. Maybe he wants us to focus on our lack, the things that we don't have, our sorrow, whatever it is. Satan's like, wait a second. Why are you distracting people? Why are you distracting them from what I want them to do? Because I don't want them to seek after the things of God. I don't want them to be set free from the bondage that has them wrapped up. I don't want these things. Hey, don't distract these people. Right? And so in verse 6 through 8, it goes on to say this. That same day, Pharaoh sent this order to the Egyptian slave drivers and the Israelite foremen. Do not supply any more straw for making bricks. You know what? Make the people get it themselves, but still require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They're lazy, right? So what happens? All of a sudden in our lives, things get harder. Things get to be more difficult, and it's frustrating, right? All of a sudden, at home, things start to go crazy, right? Our spouses start to act up. Our children are going haywire. There's problems on the job, problems in other relationships, problems with friendships. Whatever the case is, all of a sudden, Satan's like, you know what? I'm gonna make this even more difficult. That tasking that I had for them, so that they are blinded from what God wants to do in their lives. You know what? I'm gonna make them even more lazy. They're just going to feel sluggish, not even wanting to get out of the bed, right? They're just going to be more tired, right? Or maybe he's like, hey, I'm going to increase this feeling of sorrow. I'm going to lay it on there. You know what? I'm just going to add depression to the plate, right? And he just puts that cloak on even more, like just heavy. And sometimes we get overwhelmed by the heaviness of the cloak. We get overwhelmed by the situations and the circumstances. And we're like, wait a second, God, you told me that you were bringing me out of this dark place into a place of light. You told me that you were going to deliver me. You told me that you had a plan for me. You told me that you were going to change my situation and my circumstances. But I just see that things are getting more difficult. I see that what was going on before I said yes to you is now even more difficult. Did I make a bad decision? Did I do the wrong thing? Did I make a bad choice doing it your way, saying yes to you, saying yes to your will? I love it, guys. So we end up beginning to question God's faithfulness. We begin to question his faithfulness in what he has said. Because if the enemy can just distract us, we can even begin to forget the promises in the first place. What was that promise that God said to you, that he gave to you? Maybe he said, hey, I'm going to bring you your spouse. I'm going to bring you your family. I'm going to save your family members, right? I'm going to get you a new job. Like all these things that God says. And then all of a sudden we're going through this season where things just are so dark and so dim, and we're going through the storm. And all of a sudden we begin to lose sight and lose focus of the promises. Half the time, sometimes we even forget what those promises were because the storm is so heavy on our life. And later on in verse 12, it says that the Israelites began to scatter, trying to find the hay, trying to find a straw so that they can make these bricks, because all of a sudden their load got heavier. And so what did they do? They lost focus and they scattered. So when God was trying to bring them together so that they can become one and move into the things that he has for them, instead they were focused on their situation. They were focused on the problem, and they began to scatter. In what areas in your life are you just saying, you know what, I'm just going to scatter because it's too difficult? Where in your life are there obstacles? What are the obstacles in your life? What are the obstacles? Where do you see a lack of provision and you're focusing more on that than the promises of God? Maybe you have distractions in your ministry. Maybe you have distractions on the job. Whatever it is, we cannot lose focus of the promise, because it's still a promise. It's still a promise. In my own life, man, I see even right now that God is moving me into a new place, and he is doing some phenomenal things, but it doesn't come without a price. It doesn't happen without pushback, and things have gotten difficult in my life. And I've spoken about it before. Things have gotten heavy, and I start to lose focus because I'm focusing on my circumstances. I'm focusing on how I feel. I'm focusing on how it's not fair. I'm focusing on why me, God, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. And what's happening is I am beginning to lose focus and not focusing on God. And when I begin to do that, I have to pull back and say, wait a second, I need perspective. Perspective. Don't forget the promises of God. Don't lose focus. Don't lose sight of what he has for you. Don't lose sight that even in the storm, God is faithful to finish what he has started, because he's a good God. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please follow me on YouTube, Love at the Cross, and on Facebook, Love at the Cross as well. Hopefully the studio will be up and running this Wednesday or Monday. You could check me out Wednesdays and Mondays. I play awesome music and I speak for a little bit. So I love you guys, and I will see you guys later.